Newsflash, your Saturn return does not equate to you being doomed. A few years ago, I was in the same position as you might be right now. I was scared, fearful, timid, nervous, not knowing what my Saturn return was going to hold for me. But let me tell you, as somebody who is about to come out of their Saturn return and survived it to tell the tale, and while I'm not going to sugarcoat, Saturn does bring obstacles inevitably. It does not mean that you are doomed, nor does it mean you should be dreading your life. If you stay in the energy of doom and dread, then yeah, you're right, this transit is going to suck for you and nothing productive is going to come of it. But if you want to take power over this transit and come out the other side clearer, more aligned, more powerful, this is the video for you. Hola, beautiful souls. Welcome back or welcome to my channel, where we merge the cosmos with everything self-development to become our highest selves every day. If that sounds like something you're interested in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And if you want more than YouTube, you can follow me on social media platforms or head to the link in my description to find my birth chart readings and my free astrology cheat sheet, which makes astrology so much more digestible for you. First, let's talk about why Saturn is so important and why there is such an emphasis placed on this planet. If you didn't know, Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, which is the cardinal earth sign, and rules over the 10th house in astrology, the house that governs quote-unquote social status and achievements. Saturn is arguably one of the most, if not the most important planet in astrology. I actually think Saturn might be my favorite planet because Saturn does not mess around with your potential. Whereas a couple of the planets such as Jupiter and Neptune definitely serve to be visionary planets. They provide us the dream. They reconnect us to the unseen realms of life, such as our subconscious, what we really desire, and it connects us to the intangible. Saturn is the planet that challenges us to do something with those visions and those dreams. A lot of people try to spin Saturn's energy as a party pooper and a dream killer, but it is not trying to kill your dreams. It tests your discipline to get to your dreams. Do you really have what it takes? Are you willing to do what it takes? Are you willing to sacrifice what you need to sacrifice to make it happen? These are the questions Saturn is going to directly bring to your doorstep and challenge you to face up to. This is why whatever significant Saturn movement is happening is so important. I definitely consider Saturn the tough love planet, and I popularly like to call it the cosmic coach of astrology. Just like a life coach, Saturn is always challenging you for your growth, trying to ground you in your divine potential through structure, accountability, and initiating you into the next level of life. So now that you know why Saturn is so important, what exactly is the Saturn return and why is it such a huge deal? First of all, the reason that it's called the Saturn return is because this is the moment when Saturn literally returns to the zodiac sign that it was moving through at the time that you were born. For example, if Saturn was in Pisces at the time that you were born, your Saturn return happens every time Saturn goes back into Pisces and orbits back through Pisces, which usually happens around 27 to 28 years old, and then the second Saturn return won't happen till you're about 56 years old. The time it takes Saturn to orbit around the sun is about 28 to 30 years, which already makes it significant when it returns back to the sign that it was at when you were born. Saturn returning to the sign that it was in at the time that you were born signifies one of the biggest shifts in our lives because it's the time when the universe stops giving you allowances. Saturn is a disciplinarian. Saturn is about his business. He knows what he wants to get done and he'll do what he needs to do to make sure that you achieve what you need to achieve. So with that being said, you may have been given all these allowances growing up. You may have made mistake after mistake. You may have learned, you may have grown, but when Saturn comes around, he is officially done with asking you politely to stop your BS. Saturn starts requiring that you evolve and take the road that you need to level up. It's because of this that people start questioning their career paths, their relationships, their purpose, their lifestyle, finances, everything. If people don't know about astrology, Usually people describe the ages 28 to 31 as the time where their entire mindset shifted, where their entire life finally shifted because they were done with their own BS. People say around this age is the time when they finally started to do what they really wanted to do. They gained a lot more confidence in themselves. They started being more authentic to themselves. They started having more boundaries. But if you know astrology, you know that this tends to be your Saturn return. And when Saturn enters the sign that it was in when you were born, a lot of things that are not working, that you have been allowing to stay in your life, but you know are not working, they start to fall away. During my Saturn return, I faced so many losses of all kinds, mainly when it comes to personal relationships, because my Saturn is actually in the 11th house. As a Pisces, I struggle with boundaries, and my Saturn return heavily highlighted the way in which me not enforcing my boundaries was damaging my own success and my own freedom and my own well-being in my life. A lot of the growing up that I had to do was around the way that I continuously betrayed my boundaries. And that was one of the biggest lessons of my Saturn return. So you will find during your Saturn return that a lot of things will start to crumble. It's usually because those are the things that you are not supposed to have in your life as it is, or they are signifying something that you should not be allowing. You should not be keeping in your life. And Saturn is the one tough enough and the one that loves you enough to actually extract it and remove it, even if it's not what you like. It's like when you're a little kid and you really want a piece of dessert, but your parents are like,
You had way too much sugar as is. That is really bad for you. No.
and you start crying and throwing a tantrum and you're like,
But I want that piece of candy so bad.
who knows best? Who knows? Your parents. Your parents know that extra piece of candy for you is not good for you, but you don't care because you just want to indulge. But who cares? Your parents. And they're willing to do the thing that maybe makes them look like the bad guy to you. But in the end, you would thank them for it. If you look back in time, you would thank them for being that way. So it might feel tough at moments, but Saturn is truly like the cosmic serum that purges the things that you should not have from your life so you can make way for what you actually deserve. The one thing I will say about a Saturn return is that a lot of times many things in your life will slow down in a way. It will start to feel like an uphill trek, like you are traversing a mountain. Like you may have felt you were walking through the valley with some obstacles and some hills here and there. When your Saturn return rolls around, it can feel like you are traversing a really difficult mountain. And it can feel like things are happening much slower for you, or something was backtracked in some way. That is totally normal and totally common. That tends to be what happens when we've been suppressing so much or allowing so many things that are not in alignment. When they start uprooting themselves and coming to the surface and being purged, a lot of things in our life will slow down for a moment because we need to reflect. We need to sit back and reevaluate how we're moving our path forward from here on out. Saturn is a slow moving planet. When we're dealing with the outer planets, things happen slower because they orbit slower. This is about sitting back, reevaluating, purging what needs to be purged, reflecting on yourself, and being sure to take the time to turn inward so you can move forward in the world in a way that is aligned, especially after your Saturn return passes. During my Saturn return, for example, a lot of things with my social media career really slowed down. I did make some headway, but everything felt like pulling teeth. And that was partially because of the work I needed to do during my Saturn return. Everything felt so slow and I started to feel pretty discouraged. But I realized now, coming out of my Saturn return, I can tell you now that is totally normal during a Saturn return. And it's because anytime you're taking time to reevaluate and restructure, which is Saturn's focus, things are going to feel like they're moving a bit slower. But that is natural and it is very much a necessary part of the process. Now I'm going to give you my biggest tips that I learned personally from my Saturn return to help you use this energy as positively as possible. Number one, surrender to whatever Saturn brings to your path during this transit. I'm going to hold your hand through the screen while I say this. Okay, are you holding it? Be willing to let go of what's clearly not working, even if it hurts. Be willing to let go because better is on the way. I promise you. One thing about Saturn is he is going to clear what is blocking your growth. No apologies, no questions asked. It is just a natural energetic trade-off, a natural law of the universe that in order for something better aligned with you to emerge, something else must be lost that is taking up space in your life. If you have your bed and you have a terrible springy mattress, you cannot bring in another better bed if you do not get rid of that one first. If you try, your room is going to be cluttered. You're not going to be able to move around. It's going to cause problems. And also, why is the old bed even there? In order for something better to come into your energetic space, something has to be removed. And this was one of the hardest parts of my Saturn return for me. One of the reasons that it was so hard for me to move through certain areas of it is I held on to some things for dear life until they quite literally exploded in my face and I could not ignore it anymore. And if there's one thing I learned, it's that when it explodes in your face, that is 100 times more painful than if you didn't let it get to that point. So one of my biggest, first and foremost tips for your Saturn return is to be ready to surrender and let go. Somewhat in the same vein as the previous tip, do not make rigid plans, build supportive routines instead. Saturn will probably bring a lot of unexpected shifts in your life. And I mean big, unexpected shifts. Remaining flexible will help you navigate these unexpected shifts in a way that doesn't make you feel like you're going insane or fighting the energy of your life. So instead of thinking, oh,
Saturn's coming around. I need to build rigid routines to be successful.
no. Saturn return is not the time to become overly rigid and try to instill some type of really militant routine in your life. No, you need to allow flexibility because Saturn is undoubtedly going to be initiating the purging and realignment process in your life. Therefore, you have to make room for that. Part of surrendering is not making your life overly rigid and being ready to navigate it with flexibility. So when I say start supportive routines, something I did, my routine changed so many times during my Saturn return, but something I did is I just started to focus on certain things in my daily life that would help emotionally support me. Emotionally supporting yourself during your Saturn return is one of the best ways to stay buckled in during this energy change. Something I heavily prioritized, for example, in my own Saturn return was going on a lot more nature walks. By doing this and putting more of a focus on instilling that into my routines, and this isn't something I did every day. This is something I would do maybe weekly, bi-weekly, because I didn't always have time. But I was trying to make sure no matter how much I did it a lot more than I was prior. Because for me, that was extremely emotionally nourishing and grounding to me. Saturn is still a planet that respects remaining grounded and structured. So even though you may not be able to become perfectly structured and rigid during the Saturn return, making it a point to increase the habits that emotionally nourish you during your transit will empower you so much more to buckle up for the ride and be more mentally, physically, and emotionally prepared for the ride. Third, prioritize what authentically excites you and move with intention. As rigid and structured Saturn may seem at times based on its stereotype, Saturn actually supports self-actualization, not conformity. It may seem like Saturn is a planet that awards conformity because it's considered the more traditional planet. Just because Saturn wants you to be more responsible and accountable in your life does not mean that it wants you to just conform and fall by the wayside and do what everybody else is doing. It wants you to self-actualize your purpose. And in order to do that, you need to move with intention. You cannot just blindly move through your life, going through the motions, doing what you've always done. Your Saturn return is going to be excruciatingly painful if that's all you're allowing to happen. If you have been trying to do things that everybody else wants you to do, and you have been allowing yourself to move in a way that is influenced by what everyone else expects of you, Saturn is going to give you a harsh lesson in self-actualization because Saturn is challenging you to realize what it is that you stand for, what your purpose is, and what matters to you moving forward. One way to move more intentionally during this time is to start practicing your boundaries around what is not for you. A lot of times when we move through autopilot and we move through the motions of the day without actually doing the things we want to do, we kind of start to condition our bodies to just accept whatever's happening, even if it hurts us, even if it makes us feel sad. We just rather not move out of autopilot, and we think that it's so much easier, right? It's not. You are only damaging yourself and the life that you could be living in the long term, the happiness that you could feel, the empowerment that you could feel. So to begin moving intentionally, I would start building awareness around where you sacrifice yourself, where you do not set certain boundaries. If somebody asks you to do something for them, but you don't have the capacity and you always do too much for everybody else, and it takes you away from time that nourishes you, or maybe it takes you away from your goals. Maybe you try to have plans around your goals, like you're going to film some videos some evening, but then someone always pulls you away from it, whether it's your partner, your family, your job, they pull you away from it. You're going to start reaching a fork in the road where you need to start making choices for yourself. And Saturn Return is going to continue to place obstacles in the other path of conformity to try and push you to have no choice but to go onto the fork that serves you. Number 4 also ties into number 3. It's to reflect often before you chase anything. Saturn rewards those who pause, reflect, and realign themselves constantly. This is going to be a concentrated time of reevaluation because a lot of change may be happening for you, a lot of uprooting, aggressive uprooting at that. And if your idea of combating that is to hustle harder, if you equate that with, I'm not doing enough, I'm not trying hard enough, I need to do this now, and I need, no, you're doing the opposite of what Saturn wants from you. A lot of times when we busy ourselves too much and we push and push and push for something to happen that is just not happening, and it's like we're pulling teeth, a lot of times something is being signaled, whether it's the path that we're taking or it's something is being signaled within us that is not in alignment. Something needs to be honed in on and evaluated. And this is what Saturn encourages. But if you just focus on pursue, fight harder, try harder, Saturn's going to be incredibly frustrated with you, and then he's going to try harder. He's going to try harder to win the fight. And if there's one thing you cannot win, it's a fight with the divine. Like I said in the portion about your Saturn return, I mentioned that things will naturally move slower. A lot of things will feel like they are becoming stagnant, or they're not making momentum or having much headway during your Saturn return. And that is simply because your Saturn return is meant to be a time of purging, reflecting, and realigning. That way you can step into your next chapter as a brand new, elevated version of yourself to make happen in the next chapter of your life. That is what you are building for in this portion of your life. You can see your Saturn return as the time of stretching before a workout. Nobody wants to stretch before a workout. So many people try to jump straight into their workouts with no stretching, no warm up, no prep of any kind. And you can face life-altering injuries by doing so, or you can face the repercussions way down the line when you're older of that lack of discipline. Saturn wants you to stretch, warm up, and prep yourself energetically, spiritually, mentally, physically, before you enter the next chapter of your life. So it is natural. You are not going backwards. You are simply slowing down so you can take the natural process that is most healing for you and that prepares you the most for the next coming chapter. Last but not least, you need to face your blocks and see this as a spiritual initiation into your higher self. I hate to break it to you, but you need to get honest about your toxic cycles, your blocks, your unhealthy patterns, all the things you don't want to face. Saturn return is going to be one of the most pinnacle shadow work times of your life. Don't get me wrong, shadow work is something that I think goes on for our entire entire lives. Becoming better is a long haul journey, yes. But like I said, Saturn returns are a concentrated time of reevaluation and inner work. If you are fighting the shadow work, if you refuse to face yourself, you're going to have a really rough Saturn return. When you see your shadows coming to the surface, because you inevitably will during this time. I'm not trying to sugarcoat anything. I'm just trying to make you aware of how you can better buckle up and empower yourself after this placement. But Saturn is going to mirror your shadows to you until you own up to them and change them. This is one of the reasons that spending so much time in nature during my Saturn return really helped me. And this is why having a grounding routine for yourself during your Saturn return and developing that will be essential. You can't help the way that the Saturn return will shake things up and cause things to crumble, but something you can control is how you decide to react. And one of the best ways to react to things that are shaking up your world is to place an emphasis and a focus on grounding yourself regularly. You're going to know what that is for you, but for me, it was going to nature a lot more often than I already was prior, because it would realign my energy and create calm, and it would allow me to reflect. There were so many times I sat by the little river that I would go to and I cried to myself because I was purging things that I was going through. I would sit in front of the water. I would watch the water, and it was almost like a type of meditation because I would just watch the water sparkle and move in the daylight. And it was a very healing, transformative moment for me every time I did that, because it would bring something to the surface. It would touch me emotionally enough to where I could reflect on whatever was happening at that moment, whatever I was dealing with. And let me tell you, I was dealing with something constantly during my Saturn return, okay? So this practice was essential, and it allowed those emotions to come up and purge themselves, and it would bring me even more clarity and empowerment every time I did this. Sometimes I would also take my journal to the water with me, and I would journal, just dump my thoughts, just brain dump onto the page in front of the water. No headphones. I would listen to the sounds of nature because that is also grounding. I would hear the birds and I would write about what I hear. I would do like a sensory journal entry sometimes where I would write about what I'm hearing. This would also further ground me because I'm a very sensory person. My nervous system is like go, go, go. Shout out to all my Gemini and Aquarius placements. Whatever I can do to ground myself nervous system wise, especially when it comes to sensory things, is essential. So take from that what you will. You know how to apply this to your own life. But whatever it is that you decide to do, don't be afraid of the shadows that are coming up. Don't be afraid of the inner work that is coming up. That is precisely what Saturn return is going to do for you. And if you notice shadows coming up, guess what? As hard as that may be, that means your Saturn return is doing exactly what it needs to make you your highest self, to make you unstoppable for the next phase of your life. If you're about to enter your Saturn return right now, at the time that you're watching this, or whether you're currently in it, take a moment right now to breathe. And remember, everything that is happening in your Saturn return is happening for you, not to you. You're never being punished, you're only being properly prepared. Let me know where Saturn is in your chart, and if you're entering your Saturn return, if you're in the midst of it, whoever's watching this, leave your Saturn placement below and let's talk about it. But if this gave you any type of clarity, be sure you don't gatekeep the knowledge and share it with somebody else that you think it might help. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future videos like this one that empower you to live your best life through the lens of astrology and self-development. But until I see you in the next video, adios.